So good morning, welcome back everybody. I'm very excited to start this new series with everybody. This is going to be a series called The What and Why of Prayer, and we're going to be going through 3 episodes a week. So we're going to be looking at different ideas every single week. Our first episode takes us through Modeh Ani, our second through Netilas Yadayim, and our third through Asher Yotzar as we move our way through the day. I'd like to start off by saying a special thank you to Autumn and Bruce Mail, who are sponsoring today's shir on the Boba Yom Yotzat of Autumn's father, Mr. Walter Lido Zev Ben Moshe. So Yotzad is today, and a person who brought a lot of cheer, a lot of positivity wherever he went. Very strong person who continues to influence this world. And actually, Be'ezra Hashem, today one of the things we're learning about today is going to be very much in line with the person and the personality he was and continues to be through his family. Let's start at the very beginning. So today we're going to spend each segment of this new series is going to be about 10-15 minutes, and then we move on to the next. So short, the general overview is that I thought about doing this in very many different ways, and then ultimately I think that the best way to do it is the following. There's going to be the first section is really actually just the what, which is just basic details. And rather than going through all the sources, we're going to talk about it, just discuss it outside, basic, fact by fact. Put a general list, and then we'll look at the why. We'll look inside to see some of the sources. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So Modeh Ani, first thing we say in the morning. When do we say it? It is interesting. This is one of the only statements that we make. It's not a bracha, because it isn't a blessing. One of the only statements that we make, which we are allowed to make in a state of, so to speak, compromise. Because a person is allowed to make this in bed. A person is actually, according to many other poskim, should be making this the first thing in the morning, even before they get out of bed. Which means that there's a level of compromise. Means to say they've not done Netilas Yadayim. The person's not in a state of, so to speak, full purity. But nonetheless, a person's able to say Modeh Ani. Why is it that a person may say Modeh Ani without Netilas Yadayim? So you'll notice that the formulation of this statement is Modeh Ani lefonecha melech chai v'kayam. I am thankful to you, God, living God, that you returned to me my neshama, my soul, bechemla, in mercy, rabba emun osecha, much or great is your faithfulness. So it is interesting you notice that in the actual statement, we do not mention God's name. We refer to Him. We don't mention His name, which is formulated specifically that way because it's meant to be said perhaps before one gets to any other statement in the day. Now it is possible, and certainly speaking for myself and speaking for getting up my kids, it's very possible that the first word in one's day may not be Modeh. It could be, oi, it's too early. Or was that the third time I heard my snooze? There's multiple other options as to what the first words in one's day can be. But Modeh Ani is meant to be the first thing that a person's is supposed to say. Now, what is the background? What's the why? There's not so many halachas that surround Modeh Ani, but the why is fascinating. So it actually is patterned based on a pasuk in Eicha. And the pasuk, out of all places, the pasuk says, Chadashim labekorim, new or renewed in the morning, Rabba emun osecha, ample or great is your grace or your faithfulness. Which is fascinating. What about the renewal in the morning relates to faithfulness? Now, the faith isn't about us. Isn't it interesting? The faith is about Hashem. Hashem's faith in us. So why? Why is the morning a time to renew our perspective and appreciation of the faithfulness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? So, the number of the Mefarshim on Halacha talk about this. So, as an example, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, or Gan 3, it says in source 2, "V'gam b'shach bal mishkavoi yeda lifnei mihu shochev." No, he just actually finished the previous Halacha, was that a person, wherever they are in life, they need to know in front of whom they stand. So, whether it would be behind closed doors or in the public eye, a person needs to be aware of Hashem. So, he says, and even when you lie, da lifnei mihu shochev. Now, we don't hear that as a bumper sticker so often. Know in front of whom you lie. The first thing a person should focus on is remember the kindness of Hashem. A person deposits their soul in a state of tiredness, and is returned to him in a state of calmness. that a person can serve God all day. Kizeh kol ha'adam. That's the focus of our life. Quoting the pasuk in Eicha, Perush. What does that mean? Every day we have the renewed capacity of being a new person. And we thank Hashem for this. It's fascinating. Now, on a physical level, there's an element of renewal, right? The body metabolizes certain enzymes. We have the ability to be able to get up in the morning and be fresh. But this is not just a physical phenomenon, this is a spiritual phenomenon. The return of the soul is this, so to speak, this start afresh. By the way, just to clarify what that means with the return of the soul. We've been learning on Wednesdays the topic in the Ramchal, in the Derech Hashem. And he explains that there are 5 levels of soul. There is the Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, and Yechida. And the loftier levels, the Ruach, Neshama, and so on, actually are less tethered to the body. They are able to levitate, perhaps, or explore the spiritual realm more. So to speak, the kite string is lengthened, and then they are brought back and tethered back to the body. That's what happens in the morning. So the language is naturally focused on that, which is why Sheikh Zarta be nishmasi. Not that you HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you return my nefesh, but nishmasi is the neshama, the higher levels. And we're going to say Elokai neshama shenasati, which we'll deal with, God willing, episode 4. But the notion of just before we go to bed, we say Biyadcha afkid ruchi, Hashem, I give you, I deposit my ruach. There's an element of where we're giving away, or so to speak, allowing space for our nefesh and ruach, our neshama and ruach to migrate. As it returns, there's an element of refreshing in the spiritual terms, which is also reflected physically as well, which is what we're talking about, which is what happens. Now, so if we're to think about this for a moment, so what is the faithfulness? What is the faithfulness that we're talking about then? In which aspect are we acknowledging Hashem's faith? In the return, right? I mean to say the fact that God saw us fit to return, to have the neshama returned, that's the element of faith. He believes in us, in our being part of this mission. And unfortunately, we know that people don't wake up, right? There are times where people don't wake up. And so the fact that we wake up in the morning and that we are conscious means to say God felt that it was important for us to be here today. Rabbi Munasech Hashem, we thank you for your faith in us to allow us back, to allow our consciousness back, our neshama back into ourselves as well. But the Medrash takes it further. It's not just about faith in this moment, and me particularly. The Medrash is to be found in Parshas Vayishlach, and it is in source 3 where the Medrash is describing the conversation had between Yaakov Avinu and the Malach. If you remember, they're locked in a nightly battle the night before they're about to encounter. Yaakov is about to encounter Esav, and Yaakov has wrestled this angel to the point that the angel says to him, "Vayomer shalcheni ki ala hashacha, send me out because the dawn has broken." What does he mean? Ksiv chadashim labakarim rabba menosacha, quoting our pasuk in Eicha, Omer Rabbi Shimon ben Abar Abba ad shatam echadshenu b'chol boker v'boker anu yodim shemu noscha rabba lachayos lanu esam esem. If, in the microcosmic sense, we know that Hashem finds it worthy to take a body which is essentially in a state of semi-comatose death, right? The body is not in a state of function, and now there's a renewal and a wake-up, so then that tells me that there's going to be a time at the end of days where the bodies are going to also have, on a grander scale, the return of the neshama to them. So therefore, what am I attesting to in the moment? I'm feeling alive. But I know that means to say that all those who are departed are also going to be renewed in life again. That's what I'm learning for. The Rabbi Munasach is projecting outwards into, so to speak, an axiom of faith as well. There, the Medrash goes on to say one more line. Omar Rabbi Alexandri, imashata b'chadshenu b'boikron shel malchuyos onu yodim shemonascha rabba liga'aleinu. Not only is it referring to resurrection of the dead, but it's referring to redemption. This is a redemptive process of the renewal of life in a body. At this point in time, therefore, we are talking about how this is a model for what Jewish history is going to be looking like as well. And it's interesting that finally the Medrash now returns to the topic of the parasha there, but it does have relevance to us. Or Rabbi Chabal b'Shem Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachman Amar, that this was said in the name of Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachman, La'olam ein kat shel malam mekaleses u'shone ela b'chol yom bareh HaKadosh Baruch Hu kat shel malachim chadasha. Every day, there's a renewed set of angels created every day who present praise in front of Hashem. And then they move on. That's this angel was saying, it's my turn to praise. So in a certain sense, this is patterning a spiritual process upstairs as well. That's what the Midrash is describing over here, which is what we're saying. That means to say that every morning, when we're groaning as we try to get one foot over the edge of the bed, that moment in time, we're actually talking about grand ideas if we're willing to stretch ourselves that far as possible. That's what Rabbi Sachs says in his Siddur. Despite its brevity, the sentence articulates it's a transformative act of faith, the recognition that life is a gift from God. Life now and life begadol, life in general. It is interesting. I actually just came across there was an interview just 2 years ago now in Vanity Fair of Gal Gadot. This is when Wonder Woman first came out, and what's such a beautiful, that she was ranked the most popular or the most well-known Israeli. Right, which makes sense, meaning her face is on across all the countries in the world except for Kuwait, of course, where they wouldn't allow the movie in. And they're right. You know why? Because she's a pretty good representation of certain aspects of Judaism. In the interview, she talks about how lucky she feels. And so one of the things she says, I'm lucky, she tells me. They say thank you every morning. In the Jewish culture, there's a prayer that you're supposed to say every time you wake up in the morning, thank God. And she goes on to say, you say, Modeh Ani, which means I give thanks, she says. So every morning I wake up and step out of bed and say, thank you for everything. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. She closes her eyes for a moment as if saying the prayer all over again. Nothing to be taken for granted. Is to be taken for granted. Meaning, think about that. It's such a profound perspective just to have appreciation of the Almighty. And this actually, the Rabbi Sachs has an article on this in Parshas Tzav called Giving Thanks. He notes there was a remarkable study which was done called the Nun Study. It was a very, very interesting study in which they took 700 nuns who were arranging in the age group of 75 to 102. And they were looking at their health, early onset of Alzheimer's, all the issues to talk about in this particular bracket. And they asked the nunnery, this is Notre Dame here in America, they asked for, in the 1930s, when they entered the convent, for their letters for application. Their letters describing why it was that they wanted to enter this holy calling. And in fact, the convent did give access for these nuns. And they were able to look at the letters in their early years and compare them to their health in their later years, 60 years later. And what was fascinating is that they analyzed them using certain coding for looking for positive emotion, for words of description of love and passion, like, so to speak, positive effect. And they found that, in fact, not only did those who had more positivity in their life have less disease, but they were able to quantify it in a 7-year longer lifespan on average. Can you imagine that? A 7-year, they were more willing to have exercised. They were more willing to go for checkups than the doctor. And what was fascinating about the study is that if you take a convent, you have a pretty much relatively controlled group. Because you don't have people, you don't have the ones going for the extreme sports and the ones who are, reading the books. It's all one, so to speak, one system. So you can control for all other factors. And they found that positive emotion, the perspective of thankfulness, is something which is a huge contributing factor to well-being and health. In fact, this is famous. There is by Dr. Robert Emmons and Davis, and McCullough of the University of Miami and Emory and UC Davis were able to put together a study in which they asked a group of people to record their emotions over a 10-week period. One group was asked to record all positive aspects of gratitude in their day. Another group was asked to record all things that annoyed them, and another group was just told to have a diary of what they did. They were able to measure the difference in the health and the well-being of those people 10 weeks later, and there were transformative differences in terms of the positive nature of the people's days, that how healthier their blood pressure after 10 weeks was different because of focusing on positive and gratitude. And as Rabbi Sachs points out, at the end over here in source 6 on page 3, he says the following: Since the publication of the Nun study in the second paragraph and the flurry of further research it inspired, we now know that the multiple effects of developing an attitude of gratitude, it improves physical health and immunity against disease. Grateful people are more likely to take to take regular exercise and go for medical checkups. Thankfulness reduces toxic emotions such as resentment, frustration, and regret, and makes depression less likely. It helps people avoid overreacting to negative experiences by seeking revenge. It tends to make people sleep better. It enhances self-respect, making it less likely that you will envy others for their achievements or success. Grateful people tend to have better relationships. Saying thank you enhances friendships and elicits better performance from employees. It also is a major factor in strengthening resilience. One study of the Vietnam War veterans found that those with higher levels of gratitude suffered lower incidence of PTSD. Remembering the many things we have to be thankful for helps us survive painful experiences, from losing jobs to bereavement. No, that is neither easy nor natural. We are genetically predisposed to pay more attention to bad than good. Have you noticed that most reviews are negative? It's just a natural thing. People like to give bad reviews. That's how we are doing. We are hyper alert to potential threats and dangers. It takes focused attention to become aware of how much we have to be grateful for. That, in different ways, is the logic of prayer, of making blessings, of Shabbos, and many other elements of Jewish life. And that's why we begin the day with the word Modeh. I admit I'm thankful. I'm thankful that my day started off in the right way. This is episode number 1, is understanding the perspective of Modeh Ani, trying to feel what it is that we say, trying to say what it is that we mean every morning.